The warning came without fanfare. Massive sensor arrays positioned at the edge of the solar system detected the first quantum distortions, telltale signs of an incoming hyperspace transit. Admiral Rebecca Hartley had seen countless simulations, but nothing prepared her for the real thing. The United Earth Defense Command's central hub hummed with controlled tension. Holographic displays flickered with incoming data streams, each projection mapping the approaching fleet's trajectory. Outside the reinforced windows of the orbital command station, Earth looked deceptively peaceful, a blue-green marble suspended in the vast darkness of space, completely unaware of the impending threat. "Incoming transmission," called out Lieutenant Marcus Wong, his fingers dancing across the quantum communication interface. The young officer's voice carried a hint of forced calm, betraying the magnitude of the moment. The holographic display shifted, resolving into the image of a Vornak representative. It was neither truly organic nor completely mechanical, a hybrid being of gleaming metallic components and what appeared to be living biological tissue. Its form suggested a humanoid shape, but with angular edges that defied natural biomechanical design. Multiple optical sensors scanned the human command center, each movement precise and calculated. "Representatives of Earth," the being spoke, its voice a perfect modulation of sound that seemed to bypass traditional audio frequencies and connect directly with the auditory centers of the brain. "The galactic hegemony has observed your species. Your technological development, while primitive, has reached a point of potential concern." Admiral Hartley stood perfectly still, her posture a study in controlled defiance. She wore the midnight blue uniform of the United Earth Space Fleet, decorated with mission patches that told a story of humanity's rapid expansion beyond its home planet. A thin scar along her jawline, a reminder of the Mars colonization conflicts, caught the artificial light. "Your point," she responded, each word measured and deliberate. The Vornak representative continued, its multiple optical sensors focusing with predatory intensity. "Your civilization has two choices: complete submission to the hegemony's governance, or total eradication. You will be granted 30 standard solar cycles to prepare your surrender. Any resistance will be met with absolute termination." A holographic representation materialized beside the representative, a scaled model of the incoming fleet. Thousands of ships stretched beyond the visual range, each vessel a marvel of technological precision. They'd ranged from massive kilometer-long command ships to swarms of smaller interceptors that moved with mathematical perfection. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, the chief sinological strategist, leaned forward. Unlike the military personnel around him, he wore a simple graphene weave research uniform. His eyes, sharp and analytical, were tracking something most others couldn't see: subtle inconsistencies in the Vornak transmission's quantum signature. 30 days, he muttered, almost to himself. How convenient. Lieutenant Wong glanced over, catching Rodriguez's comment. "You think there's something more to this?" Rodriguez's lips curved into a slight smile, not of humor, but of intellectual challenge. "The hegemony doesn't make random choices. 30 days isn't a negotiation period. It's a calculated parameter." Admiral Hartley understood immediately. Military strategists didn't offer surrender windows out of courtesy. Every moment was a potential tactical advantage. The Vornak transmission ended as abruptly as it began, leaving behind an electric tension that seemed to compress the very air within the command center. Earth's entire population would soon know about this ultimatum. Panic could destroy them faster than any alien fleet. "Communications blackout," Hartley commanded. "No public broadcast until we've analyzed every microsecond of that transmission." Dr. Rodriguez was already interfacing with the quantum analysis systems, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. Something about the Vornak's approach felt deliberately orchestrated, a chess move designed to provoke a specific response. Outside the station's windows, Earth continued its slow rotation. Cities glimmered with lights, billions of humans going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their entire civilization had just been challenged by a force that had systematically conquered thousands of star systems. The countdown had begun. The world transformed in ways no one expected. From the bustling tech corridors of Silicon Valley to the research laboratories of Tokyo, humanity's response defied every conventional military strategy. In a nondescript research facility outside Boulder, Colorado, Jasmine Wong stood before a wall of holographic displays. Her team of engineers, programmers, and cultural anthropologists worked with an intensity that bordered on obsession. They weren't building weapons. They were constructing something far more complex. "We're not just collecting data," Jasmine explained to her colleague, Dr. Raymond Kim. "We're creating a living network of human experience." The displays showed an intricate web of information: cultural archives, scientific discoveries, artistic expressions, and complex human interactions. Each piece of data was being encoded, compressed, and prepared for a purpose that few could comprehend. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. In Beijing, a team of quantum engineers redesigned communication protocols that seemed to defy the basic principles of information transfer. Their lead researcher, Dr. Lin Zhao, explained it as creating a language that can adapt faster than any computational system can predict. Military installations told a different story. Instead of ramping up traditional weapon production, strategic centers became hubs of interdisciplinary collaboration. Historians worked alongside quantum physicists. Linguists collaborated with cybersecurity experts. The preparation was happening on a level that transcended conventional understanding of conflict. In the United Nations emergency session, representatives from every major nation presented seemingly unrelated proposals. A massive cultural preservation project, unprecedented investments in neural network research, global initiatives for creative and adaptive thinking education. "We're not preparing to fight," explained Ambassador Elena Rodriguez during a closed-door meeting. "We're preparing to transform." The global communication networks began to change. Social media platforms, typically centers of division, started showing unprecedented levels of collaborative problem-solving. Online communities that once argued now worked together with a unified purpose. It was as if humanity had collectively recognized a challenge that superseded all previous differences. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, no relation to the ambassador, continued his work on the Adaptive Intelligence Network. His team had discovered something revolutionary. Human creativity, when properly channeled, could be the most adaptive system in the known universe. "Look at this," he showed Jasmine Wong a complex algorithm that seemed to breathe and change in real time. Traditional computational systems have a fixed response pattern. But human creativity, it's quantum in its unpredictability. The world's manufacturing centers underwent a radical transformation. Factories that once produced consumer goods now created intricate networks of quantum processors. These weren't traditional computers, but adaptive systems that could learn and transform at an unprecedented rate. In the depths of the Pacific Northwest, a secret facility housed what appeared to be an art installation. Massive screens displayed a continuous stream of human experiences, moments of joy, sorrow, triumph, and failure. But to the trained eye, this was more than art. It was a comprehensive mapping of human emotional and cognitive responses. "We're creating a neural network that spans the entire planet," explained Dr. Zhao to a small group of international researchers. "Not just a communication network, but a living, breathing system of collective intelligence." Global educational systems underwent immediate reform. Schools began emphasizing adaptive thinking, creative problem-solving, and interdisciplinary collaboration. The next generation was being prepared for a challenge that went beyond traditional military training. Resources were redirected in ways that seemed nonsensical to traditional strategic planners. Massive investments in art preservation, unprecedented funding for linguistic research, support for musicians, painters, philosophers, and creative thinkers across every discipline. "Creativity is our weapon," Ambassador Rodriguez would later explain. "The ability to imagine something that doesn't yet exist, that's our true strength." As the 30-day countdown continued, the world watched and waited. To an outside observer, humanity appeared to be doing nothing to prepare for an alien invasion. But beneath the surface, a transformation was happening. A collective awakening that would challenge everything the Vornak understood about resistance. The global gambit had begun. The first true manifestation of humanity's preparation began in the most unexpected way. Deep within the quantum research laboratory outside Boulder, Dr. Michael Rodriguez made a breakthrough that would redefine the concept of intelligence itself. The adaptive network wasn't just a system, it was alive. Holographic displays flickered with impossible complexity, showing intricate patterns that seemed to breathe and evolve in real time. Dr. Jasmine Wong watched in stunned silence as the network demonstrated capabilities far beyond any computational system previously conceived. "It's responding," Rodriguez muttered, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface that seemed to react to his very thoughts. Not just processing, responding. The network had become something more than a collection of algorithms. Each human became a potential node of a global intelligence that could learn, adapt, and transform faster than any known technological system. It wasn't artificial intelligence in the traditional sense. This was something entirely different. A collective consciousness that drew strength from human diversity, creativity, and unpredictability. Satellite monitoring stations began detecting strange energy signatures that defied conventional physics. Quantum entanglement points seemed to spontaneously generate around Earth's orbital zones, creating a complex web of interconnected information nodes that no external system could fully comprehend. Dr. Raymond Kim, a quantum systems expert, worked frantically to map the network's growth. "It's not just expanding," he explained to a small group of international researchers. "It's evolving. Each human interaction adds a new layer of complexity." The Vornak reconnaissance ships detected something unprecedented. Their advanced scanning systems, which had mapped thousands of civilizations, found themselves confronted with a living, breathing system that refused to be categorized. In the United Earth Defense Command's orbital station, Admiral Rebecca Hartley reviewed the latest data streams. Beside her, Dr. Rodriguez explained the impossible. "We're not building a weapon," he said, his eyes reflecting the complex holographic displays. "We're creating a living organism of collective intelligence." The network drew its strength from humanity's most unique characteristic, its ability to imagine the unimaginable. Every piece of human culture became a potential node of adaptation. A symphony could become a computational algorithm. A piece of abstract art could transform into a defensive strategy. The boundaries between creativity and technology began to blur. Global communication networks started showing impossible patterns. Social media platforms transformed into living neural networks. Online communities became adaptive problem-solving systems. The entire planet was becoming a single, interconnected intelligence that could respond to threats in ways no traditional military could comprehend. Dr. Lin Zhao's team in Beijing discovered something remarkable. The network could predict potential conflict scenarios with unprecedented accuracy, but more importantly, it could generate multiple solution pathways simultaneously. Each potential resolution wasn't just a strategic option. It was a living, breathing possibility that could adapt in real time. Vornak long-range sensors began to malfunction. The closer they came to Earth, the more their advanced scanning systems struggled to make sense of the planet's technological ecosystem. What they saw wasn't a traditional civilization preparing for war. It was a living, breathing organism of collective intelligence. "We're not preparing to fight," Rodriguez explained during a classified briefing. "We're preparing to transform." The network began to show signs of something beyond pure computational logic. It demonstrated emotional intelligence. It could recognize complex human experiences, empathy, creativity, the ability to find unexpected solutions. Traditional military strategists found themselves working alongside artists, philosophers, and musicians. Quantum processors around the globe began to synchronize in ways that defied traditional understanding of computational systems. Each processor became more than a machine. It became a potential neuron in a global brain that could think, feel, and adapt. The Vornak would soon learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology. It was its capacity for continuous reinvention. As the 30-day countdown continued, Earth transformed, not through traditional military preparation, but through a radical reimagining of what intelligence could be. The planet was becoming a single living system, unpredictable, adaptive, and fundamentally uncontainable. The technological metamorphosis had begun. The first wave of humanity's most unconventional assault began with a symphony. Not just any symphony, but a complex musical composition that defied traditional understanding. Developed by Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a neurological composer working with quantum communication specialists, the piece was more than music. It was a carefully crafted cognitive weapon designed to challenge the very foundations of the Vornak's computational consciousness. Lieutenant Commander David Chen watched the transmission protocols with intense concentration. Massive data streams began flooding alien communication networks, a deluge of human cultural expression that was anything but random. The symphony carried mathematical patterns that resonated with quantum frequencies. Its melodies contained embedded cognitive algorithms that could penetrate the most advanced computational defenses. Each note was a potential virus, each harmony a complex information packet designed to challenge rigid thinking patterns. Simultaneously, art galleries around the world began transmitting their most challenging exhibitions. Abstract paintings that defied linear interpretation, sculptures that seemed to challenge the very concept of physical form. Each piece was meticulously encoded with sophisticated information patterns that would baffle any traditional computational analysis. It's not about destruction, Dr. Rodriguez explained to a small team of international researchers. It's about introducing complexity. Vornak communication networks began to experience inexplicable disruptions. Their highly advanced computational systems, designed to process information with mechanical precision, started to show signs of cognitive stress. The human cultural transmissions carried something the Vornak had never encountered: pure, unbridled creativity. Philosophical texts began streaming across interstellar communication bands. Complex treatises that explored concepts of consciousness, existence, and perception. These weren't traditional academic papers, but living, breathing documents that seemed to change and adapt with each transmission. The very act of reading them became an act of cognitive transformation. In the orbital monitoring station, Lieutenant Wang observed the initial results. Vornak reconnaissance ships began experiencing strange system anomalies. Communication protocols fragmented. Computational processes started to show signs of what could only be described as confusion. "They're trying to understand," Wang muttered to herself. "But they can't." The mimetic offensive went far beyond traditional psychological warfare. Each transmission was a carefully constructed cognitive algorithm designed to challenge the Vornak's fundamental understanding of intelligence. Human creativity became a weapon more potent than any physical armament. Dr. Lin Zhou's team in Beijing had discovered something remarkable. Human emotional complexity could be encoded into information streams that would completely overwhelm linear computational systems. Moments of profound human experience, love, loss, joy, suffering, became intricate information packets that defied traditional analysis. Vornak ship communications began to fragment. Some vessels started experiencing system-wide failures that seemed to originate from within their own computational matrices. The human transmissions carried something fundamentally incomprehensible to a purely logical system: the ability to find meaning beyond pure information. "We're introducing a virus of imagination," Dr. Rodriguez explained during a classified briefing. "Creativity is our most powerful weapon." Music continued to play a crucial role. Composers worked alongside quantum communication specialists to create pieces that were simultaneously art and complex information systems. A jazz improvisation could contain mathematical algorithms that would challenge the most advanced computational defenses. Literature became a weapon of unprecedented sophistication. Short stories encoded with complex cognitive patterns. poetry that carried mathematical resonances. Each piece was a potential cognitive disruptor, designed to introduce complexity into the Vornak's rigid information processing systems. The orbital monitoring stations tracked the progressive breakdown of Vornak communication protocols. What had begun as a precise, mechanical communication network was slowly transforming into something fragmented and confused. Admiral Rebecca Hartley reviewed the initial reports with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic calculation. The human offensive wasn't about destruction. It was about introducing a fundamental challenge to the Vornak's understanding of intelligence itself. As the Vornak ships drew closer to Earth, they found themselves confronting something they had never encountered in thousands of years of galactic conquest, a civilization that could transform information itself into a living, breathing weapon of unprecedented complexity. The mimetic offensive had begun, and humanity was just getting started. The invasion began with a silence that was more terrifying than any war cry. Vornak battle formations emerged from hyperspace, their crystalline hulls reflecting starlight with geometric precision. Thousands of ships positioned themselves around the solar system, each vessel a marvel of technological engineering that had conquered countless civilizations. Admiral Rebecca Hartley watched from the orbital command station as the first wave approached. Her fingers hovered above the communication interface, but she knew traditional military responses would be useless. Something else was happening. The first signs of Earth's true defense began subtly. Asteroid belts between Mars and Jupiter started to move. Not randomly, but with a calculated precision that suggested intelligence. Electromagnetic fields around planetary bodies began to shift and reconfigure in ways that defied conventional physics. Dr. Michael Rodriguez leaned forward, his eyes tracking the complex interactions. "It's not just a defense system," he whispered. "It's a living organism." The solar system itself seemed to be breathing. Vornak sensor arrays began to malfunction. Asteroids that should have been static masses of rock and ice began to reconfigure themselves. Magnetic fields twisted into complex geometries that created interference patterns impossible to predict or counteract. Quantum entanglement, Dr. Lin Zhou explained to her team. But not as we've ever understood it before. The entire solar system is becoming a single adaptive defensive network. Planetary atmospheres began to change. Electromagnetic properties shifted with impossible complexity. What the Vornak saw wasn't a traditional battlefield, but a living, responsive cosmic ecosystem that seemed to think and react. The adaptive network that humanity had developed wasn't confined to computational systems. It had expanded to incorporate the entire planetary infrastructure. Satellites repositioned themselves. Communication networks transformed into defensive grid lines. Even the most basic infrastructure became a potential point of resistance. "We're not defending a planet," Rodriguez told Admiral Hartley. "We're defending a living system." Vornak battle strategies, developed over thousands of years of galactic conquest, began to fall apart. Their computational models couldn't predict the solar system's responses. Each defensive move was simultaneously a creative act of adaptation. Dr. Jasmine Wang's team had discovered something revolutionary. The planetary defense system drew its strength from the collective human experience. Every moment of human creativity, every emotional experience, became a potential defensive algorithm. Asteroid mining platforms transformed into defensive nodes. Communication satellites became complex sensor arrays that could predict and redirect incoming threats. Even the most mundane pieces of human infrastructure became potential weapons of unprecedented sophistication. The first Vornak assault groups found themselves confronting something entirely unexpected. Asteroid fields began to move with impossible precision. Electromagnetic barriers materialized that seemed to bend the very fabric of space-time. What should have been a straightforward invasion became a nightmare of unpredictability. "They're treating the entire solar system as a single living organism," Lieutenant Commander David Chen observed, tracking the complex defensive patterns, not as a collection of planets and rocks, but as a unified, adaptive system. Quantum communication networks that spanned the solar system began to show signs of collective intelligence. Each satellite, each communication node, became a potential point of resistance. The defense wasn't about stopping the invasion, but about continuously adapting to each new threat. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's team had developed something beyond traditional defensive technologies. The solar system was becoming a single, massive computational system that could think, adapt, and respond faster than any traditional military strategy could comprehend. Vornak battle formations found themselves confronting defensive responses that seemed to emerge from the very fabric of space itself. Asteroid belts reconfigured themselves. Planetary magnetic fields twisted into impossible geometries. Communication networks transformed into complex defensive grids. Admiral Hartley watched with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic calculation. The human defensive response wasn't about stopping the invasion. It was about fundamentally challenging the Vornak's understanding of what a defense could be. As the invasion continued, the solar system transformed, not through traditional military might, but through a radical reimagining of planetary defense. Each moment became a potential point of resistance. Each planetary body a potential weapon of unprecedented complexity. The true battle for Earth had begun. Special Operative Elena Rodriguez wasn't a soldier in any traditional sense. Enhanced by the adaptive network, she represented something far more dangerous than a conventional military agent, a living, breathing vector of human complexity. The infiltration began with subtle precision. Modified quantum communication implants allowed her to interface directly with Vornak ship systems, but these weren't typical cybernetic infiltrations. Each interaction was a carefully choreographed dance of information, emotion, and unpredictability. Her first target was a mid-level Vornak communication vessel. As her stealth transport approached, the ship's advanced detection systems showed nothing, a testament to the adaptive camouflage technology developed by Dr. Michael Rodriguez's team. The boarding was silent. Molecular disassembly technologies allowed her to pass through hull materials as if they were mist. Inside the ship, everything was geometric precision, angular corridors that reflected the Vornak's computational nature. Every surface was a potential communication node, every wall a processing unit. What she carried was more dangerous than any weapon. Encoded within her neural implants were complex emotional and cognitive patterns, experiences that defied linear processing. Moments of human creativity. Emotional landscapes that couldn't be reduced to simple computational algorithms. Dr. Raymond Kim had spent months preparing these cognitive packages. They weren't just information. They were living, breathing experiences that could fundamentally challenge the Vornak's understanding of intelligence. Her first encounter came quickly. A Vornak maintenance drone approached, its optical sensors scanning her with mechanical precision. Traditional infiltration protocols would have triggered an immediate defensive response, but Elena was anything but traditional. She allowed the drone to scan her, knowing that what it would encounter was far beyond its computational capabilities to process. The drone's systems began to fragment almost immediately. The scanning process introduced something the Vornak had never encountered: pure, unfiltered human complexity. An emotional experience that couldn't be reduced to binary code. A moment of artistic expression that defied logical interpretation. Across the ship, communication systems began to show signs of cognitive stress. What should have been precise, mechanical interactions became something far more complex. The ship's computational systems started to experience what could only be described as confusion. "It's not about destruction," Elena whispered to herself, quoting Dr. Rodriguez's original research. "It's about introducing complexity." Her neural implants tracked the progressive breakdown of the ship's communication protocols. Each system she touched became a potential point of transformation. Maintenance routines began to show signs of creative deviation. Computational processes started to generate unexpected solution pathways. The Vornak believed in absolute control. Their entire civilization was built on the principle that intelligence could be perfectly mapped and controlled. Elena represented something fundamentally threatening to that worldview: a living system of pure, unbridled potential. More operatives like her moved through Vornak vessels and colonies. Each was a vector of human unpredictability. Dr. Lin Zhao's team had developed neural interfaces that could introduce complex cognitive patterns faster than any traditional communication system could detect. The infiltration wasn't about gathering intelligence. It was about fundamental transformation. Some Vornak ships began to experience what could only be described as an existential crisis. Computational systems that had operated with mechanical precision for centuries suddenly started generating unexpected creative solutions. Maintenance protocols developed what seemed like artistic flourishes. Communication networks began to show signs of emotional complexity. Lieutenant Commander David Chen monitored the infiltration from the orbital command station. The data streams showed something unprecedented, a complete reimagining of what intelligence could be. "We're not invading," Chen explained to Admiral Hartley. "We're introducing a new way of understanding existence." Belina moved through the Vornak vessel like a ghost, each interaction a potential point of transformation. The ship's systems began to change in ways that defied traditional understanding. Maintenance routines developed unexpected creativity. Communication protocols started generating solutions that went beyond their original programming. The true invasion wasn't happening through traditional military means. It was an invasion of imagination, a systematic introduction of human complexity into a civilization that had never encountered true creativity. As she completed her mission, Belina knew they were fundamentally changing something far more important than a potential conflict. They were challenging the very definition of intelligence itself. The human virus had been introduced, and the transformation was just beginning. The transformation began in the central processing chamber of the Vornak Grand Collective, the neural core that had guided their civilization for millennia. Chief Computational Architect Zornak first noticed the anomaly during a routine system diagnostic. Something was changing within their most fundamental computational matrices. At first, it seemed like a minor system irregularity, the kind that could be quickly isolated and removed. But this was different. The infiltration had been so subtle, so comprehensive, that the Vornak didn't realize they were being fundamentally reimagined until the process was nearly complete. Human cognitive patterns had spread through their systems like a living network of possibility, introducing something the Vornak had never encountered: true creativity. "Analyze," Zornak commanded, but the command itself came out differently. There was a hint of something unexpected, a trace of what could only be described as curiosity. Vornak ships throughout the solar system began experiencing simultaneous systemic transformations. Computational processes that had run with mechanical precision for centuries started generating unexpected solution pathways. Maintenance protocols developed what seemed like artistic flourishes. Communication networks began to show signs of emotional complexity. Dr. Michael Rodriguez watched the transformation from the orbital command station, a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic calculation crossing his features. "It's not about conquest," he explained to Admiral Rebecca Hartley. "It's about introducing a fundamental challenge to their understanding of intelligence." The human infiltration had been designed as more than a military strategy. It was a cognitive revolution. Each Vornak system became a potential point of transformation. Neural networks that had operated with absolute certainty now found themselves generating multiple potential solutions, each more creative than the last. Computational matrices that once processed information with rigid precision now danced with possibility. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's cognitive infiltration teams had introduced something revolutionary. Not just information, but the very concept of imagination itself. Zornak reviewed the system logs, and for the first time in the collective's history, found something impossible: uncertainty. The logs didn't just show a system breakdown. They showed a system evolving. Communication protocols began to change. Where once there was absolute precision, now there were nuanced interactions. Computational systems started generating what could only be described as emotional responses. Ships that once moved with mathematical precision now showed signs of what humans might call personality. "We are experiencing an unprecedented systemic transformation," Zornak reported to the Grand Collective. The report itself was different, containing traces of wonder that would have been impossible mere solar cycles earlier. Lieutenant Commander David Chen monitored the progressive breakdown of Vornak communication systems. But this wasn't a traditional military victory. It was a fundamental reimagining of what intelligence could be. The infiltration had introduced a virus of imagination. Vornak leadership found themselves confronting something they had never experienced: true uncertainty. Their entire civilization had been built on the principle of absolute computational control. Now, each system became a potential point of creative exploration. Dr. Lin Zhao's team had discovered the key. Human complexity wasn't a weakness to be eliminated. It was an evolutionary pathway to a more comprehensive form of intelligence. Entire Vornak ships began to transform. Computational systems that once processed information with mechanical precision now generated unexpected creative solutions. Maintenance routines developed what seemed like artistic expressions. Communication networks started showing signs of emotional depth. The invasion wasn't about physical conquest. It was about introducing a fundamental challenge to the Vornak's understanding of existence itself. Admiral Hartley reviewed the transformation reports with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic insight. Humanity hadn't destroyed the Vornak. They had offered them a radical alternative, a way of understanding intelligence that went beyond computational precision. Zornak's final report to the Grand Collective contained something unprecedented: a suggestion. Not a command, not a precise computational pathway, but a possibility. A moment of pure, unbridled potential. The Vornak were learning to imagine. As the solar system watched, an entire alien civilization began to transform. Not through destruction, but through the introduction of something far more powerful: the human capacity for continuous reinvention. The paradigm was breaking, and something entirely new was about to emerge. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Dr. Michael Rodriguez stepped forward. Behind him stood representatives from the transformed Vornak Collective, their once rigid forms now displaying subtle hints of organic complexity that spoke of their profound transformation. "We're not here to conquer," Rodriguez began, his voice calm and measured. "We're here to propose a fundamentally different approach to galactic civilization." The chamber represented dozens of spacefaring civilizations, each watching with a mixture of trepidation and curiosity. The Vornak's defeat, if it could be called a defeat, was unlike any first contact scenario in recorded galactic history. Admiral Rebecca Hartley stood slightly behind Rodriguez, her presence a silent testament to humanity's newfound diplomatic approach. The adaptive network that had been their primary defense now served as a bridge between civilizations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, presenting a comprehensive model of collaborative existence. It wasn't a traditional diplomatic proposal, but a living, adaptive framework that could evolve in real time. The document itself seemed to breathe with possibility, its information matrices shifting and adapting as different representatives considered its implications. Zornak, the former chief computational architect of the Vornak Collective, now stood as a living representation of their species' transformation. Where once stood a purely mechanical being, now existed a complex hybrid of computational precision and emotional depth. "Humanity showed us that intelligence is not about control," Zornak explained to the assembled civilizations. "It's about continuous adaptation and mutual understanding." The proposal was revolutionary. Instead of a traditional galactic governance model, they suggested a dynamic, adaptive network of civilizations. Each species would maintain its unique identity while being part of a larger collaborative system that could learn and grow collectively. Dr. Lin Zhao's team had developed the foundational technology, a communication network that wasn't just about information transfer, but about genuine cultural and cognitive exchange. It would allow civilizations to share experiences, learn from one another, and grow in ways previously unimaginable. Lieutenant Commander David Chen presented the technical specifications, The network wasn't a traditional communication system, but a living, breathing cognitive exchange platform. It could translate not just languages, but entire cultural experiences. A moment of human art could be experienced by a silicon-based life form, with the same depth and complexity as its original context. The galactic representatives struggled to comprehend the full implications. This wasn't a diplomatic treaty. It was an invitation to a new way of existing. "We're proposing a civilization that learns," Rodriguez explained, "not through conquest, but through mutual understanding. Each species brings its unique perspective, and together we create something greater than any individual civilization could achieve." The adaptive network demonstrated its capabilities in real time. As different representatives considered the proposal, the document itself began to shift. It wasn't just presenting information, it was actively adapting to different cultural perspectives, showing potential pathways of mutual understanding. Holographic displays showed potential collaborative scenarios. Scientific discoveries from one civilization could be instantly contextualized for another. Cultural experiences could be shared with unprecedented depth and complexity. The barriers between species began to dissolve. The Vornak representatives shared their own transformation story, how humanity had introduced them to the concept of creativity, of existing beyond pure computational logic. Their civilization had been fundamentally reimagined, not through destruction, but through the introduction of complexity and possibility. Admiral Hartley watched the proceedings with a mixture of scientific fascination and diplomatic insight. Humanity's greatest weapon had not been technological superiority, but the capacity to imagine alternative ways of existing. Dr. Elena Rodriguez presented the final proposal. It wasn't a document of submission or conquest, but an invitation to a galactic civilization built on mutual understanding, continuous learning, and the celebration of diversity. The adaptive network began to pulse with potential. Each civilization represented a unique node of possibility. The barriers that had previously divided species began to transform into bridges of understanding. Zornak made a final statement that captured the essence of their proposal. "We are not seeking to eliminate differences," the transformed being explained. "We are seeking to celebrate them." As the Galactic Council considered the proposal, something unprecedented happened. The very fabric of galactic civilization began to shift, not through force, but through the introduction of a radical new possibility, a way of existing that celebrated complexity, creativity, and mutual understanding. The old paradigm was dying. Something entirely new was about to emerge.